Hello, Mark. My first article is 3.5 million year old fossil microbial community found. Scientists have found fossil evidence of ancient microbial communities that lived 3.5 billion years ago. The new fossils described in the journal Astrobiology may be among the most ancient fossil life forms ever found. This is one of the oldest fossils ever found. You've got a 3.5 billion year old ecosystem, said study co-author Robert Hazen, an earth scientist at the Carnegie Institution for Science in Washington, D.C. The new find reveals that scant 1 billion years after Earth's origin, complex microbial communities that clung to sediments along the windswept seashore had already begun harvesting energy from sunlight, rather than the rocks. Oldest fossils. Scientists hotly debate how life began on Earth, though chemical evidence of carbon-based life forms, such as isotopes or different forms of carbon, reveal that life existed on early Earth. Scientists have discovered a new controversial traces of its existence. A few strong stromatolites or dome dome-like rock structures built by ancient microbial communities have been found at the Streley Formation in Australia that may date to about 3.45 billion years ago. Fossils so sulfur-eating microbes from about 3.4 billion years ago have also been found there as well. Other fossils from South Africa reveal microbial communities that date to 2.9 billion years ago. Hazen's colleague Noranowski, a researcher at Old Dominion University in Virginia, was studying ancient rocks at the Dresser Formation in Australia when she spotted some unusual formations. The region had tens of meters of spots with a rough, wavy texture. To the untrained eye, the texture could have been anything, but Noffke had spent years studying similar formations that were created by ancient and modern microbial communities. So many geologists have walked over the same rocks and never noticed anything. Hadn't taught life science. The areas had ripple marks going in many different directions, which often form because the microbiome protects sediments in some areas while exposing others. Under a microscope, the formation revealed a series of individual black filaments intertwined with sand grains that are characteristic of microbial net communities. This is what's called binding and trapping. This is how a mat structure becomes stabilized against waves, Hazen said, and the rocks also contained key mineral forms that are characteristic of the structures. All these photosynthesizers, the ancient microbial communities, of which may have been purple or brown and very small, Hazen said, probably lived along hundreds of miles of sea shore, according to the sand via filaments and harvesting nutrients from the sediments that wash ashore. Similar mats are found today in coastal regions with stagnant water. Stagnant water. More primitive rock-eating bacteria called camelotrophs likely evolved before the microbial met, though no trace of Earth's earliest pioneers has yet been found. Camelotrophs harvest energy by chemically modifying minerals such as iron or sulfur in the rock, and many such bacteria are still alive today. But the newly discovered communities were anchored to the seashore close to sun and water, so they probably weren't eat minerals found in rock. Instead, they must have harvested energy through photosynthesis, suggesting such bacteria evolved earlier than previously thought. That means very early in Earth's history, microbes have switched from using rocks for its energy to using light. Hazen said, follow Tia Goes on Twitter or Google+. Follow LiveSense Facebook and Google+ Origin article or LiveSense. Okay, and my next topic is 1st century roots of Little Red Riding Hood found. Folk tales can evolve much like species do, taking one new features and dropping others as they spread to different parts of the world. One researcher in the United Kingdom tested his analogy quite like really using analytical models there that are typically used to study the relationships between species to create an evolutionary tree for Little Red Riding Hood and its conscience. This is rather like a biologist showing the human and other apes share a common ancestor but have evolved into distinct species. Durham University anthropologist Jamie Tarani explained in a statement. Tarani found that Little Red Riding Hood likely branched off 1,000 years ago from an ancient story that had its roots in the 1st century AD. Little Red Riding Hood is well known to Westerns thanks to the Brothers Grimm. The story: a girl visits her grandmother's house only to be greeted by a wolf disguised as the old woman. Little Red Riding Hood is promptly devoured after remarking, "What big teeth you have, Granny." But a lumberjack later cuts open the wolf and saves the girl and her grandmother, who are miraculously still alive in the beast's stomach. But there are several other versions of the story from ancient European oral traditions, including variants in which the girl outwits the wolf and escapes after asking to go outside to use the toilet. In another story dubbed "The Wolf and the Kids", which has been told throughout Europe and the Middle East, a nanny goat goes out in the field but first warns her kids not to open the door. A wolf, who overhears her warning, impersonates the nanny goat, tricks the kids into letting him inside and eats them. Similar tales also pop up in oral traditions in Asia and Africa. There's the tiger grandmother in East Asia, for example, in which a group of children unwittingly spend the night in bed with a tiger or monster dressed as their grandmother. After the youngest sibling is eaten, the children get the monster to let them outside to use the toilet and then escape. To investigate the possible relationships between these tales, Tarani looked at 58 variants of the story, focusing on 72 plot variables, such as the number and gender of the protagonists, the ending, and the type of animal or monster that becomes the villain. Tyranny used phylogenetic models or models that probe the evolutionary relationships among species through time, to compare similarities between these plot variables and determine and probability that they came from the same source. The result is a tree that shows how the story may have evolved. Tyranny discovered that Little Red Riding Hood seems to have descended from the more ancient story, The Wolf and the Kids, but so did African versions that independently evolved to look like Little Red Riding Hood. The exemplifies a process biologists call convergent evolution, in which species independently evolve similar adaptations. Tyranny explained in a statement, "The fact that Little Red Riding Hood evolved twice from the same starting point suggests it holds a powerful appeal that attracts our imaginations." And, the analysis also suggests the Chinese version of Little Red Riding Hood derives from ancient European tales and not vice versa, so as other researchers have suggested. Speci- Specifically, the Chinese blended together Little Red Riding Hood, The Wolf and the Kids, and local folk tales to create a new, hybrid story, Tyranny said. Interestingly, the tale was first written down by Chinese poet Huang Huangxing, who was a contemporary or parrot of Perrault, who first wrote down the European version of Little Red Riding Hood in the 17th century. This implies that Chinese version is not derived from literary versions of Little Red Riding Hood, but from the older oral version, with which it shares crucial similarities. Okay, my next topic is uh, Swedish Ice Hotel to install fire alarms. Stockholm, a famous hotel rebuilt every winter in northern Sweden using only ice, said Thursday it would install fire alarms this year. The hotel, located in the small Arctic town of Jukkasjärvi, 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 is following a request by the authorities to guarantee the safety of its guests. We were a little surprised at first, but the reason is that there are things that can actually catch fire, like pillows, sleeping bags, or reindeer skins. Hotel spokeswoman Beatrice Carlson said, "To us the most important concern is the safety of our clients, so we will comply," she added. The hotel will open from December 6 to April 13, with prices ranging from 1,019 kroner for a single room to 7,500 kroner for the most expensive suite. Tourists come from all over the world to sleep on an ice bed in temperatures as low as -8 degrees Celsius (18 degrees Fahrenheit). The alarms, which were already tested last winter with the local fire department, have made construction of the hotel, conceived as a work of art, even harder than before. The environment is humid and ice and snow move, so it had to be taken into account. Carlson said, "It's been a challenge for our building team, but it made us one experience richer." Okay, and my next topic is, where did dogs first appear? DNA points to Europe. New York. For years, scientists have been dogged by this evolution question: just where did man's best friend first appear? The earliest known dog-like fossils come from Europe, but DNA studies have implicated East Asia and the Middle East. Now, a large DNA study is springing up with the fossils, suggesting dogs originated in Europe some 90,000 to 32,000 years ago. Experts praised the new work but said it won't end the debate. Scientists generally agree that dogs emerged from wolves to become the first domesticated animal. Their wolf ancestors began to associate with people, may be drawn by food in garbage dumps and carcasses left by human hunters. In the process, they become tamer, and scientists believe people found them useful for things like hunting and guard duty. Over a, over a very long time in this human environment, wolves gradually turned into the first dogs. The latest attempt to figure out where this happened was published online Thursday by the journal Science. Researchers gathered DNA from fossils of 18 ancient wolf-like and dog-like creatures that lived up to 36 years ago in Argentina, Belgium, Germany, Russia, Switzerland, and the United States. They compared the genetic material to modern samples from 49 wolves from North Africa, Asia, Europe, and Middle East. 77 dogs of a wide variety of breeds including Cocker Spaniel, Basset and Golden Retriever, and 4 coyotes. The DNA of modern dogs showed similarities to the genetic material from the ancient European specimens and modern-day European wolves, the researchers reported. The first dogs involved by associating with gatherers rather than farmers, since dogs evidently appeared before acu- ar- ar- agriculture. Agriculture did, they said. There are now, based on genetic evidence, three alternative hypotheses for the origin of dogs, said Robert Wang of the University of California, Los Angeles, and a study author. He said his results suggest a better case of Europe than for East Asia or Middle East. He also said the kind of wolf that gave rise to the dog is now extinct. All men of the University of Turku in Finland. All other authors said the work doesn't mean Europe is the only place where dogs emerged. We conclude that Europe played a major role in the domestication process, he said in an email. The work makes a strong argument for an origin in Europe, although it might not be the only place, said Gregor Larsen of Durham University in England, who did not participate in the research. I think it's a real step in the right direction. Okay, and my next article is bird flu strain infects human for first time. London, a strain of bird flu that scientists group could not infect people has shown up in Taiwanese woman. A nasty surprise that shows scientists must do more to spark worrisome flu strains before they ignite a global outbreak, doctors say. On a more hopeful front, two pharmaceuticals separately reported encouraging results from human tests of a possible vaccine. against a different type of bird flu and has been spreading in China since first being identified last spring, which is feared to have pandemic potential. The woman, 20, was hospitalized in May with a lung infection after being treated with Tamiflu and antibiotics. She was released. One of her throat swabs was sent to the Taiwan Centers of Disease Control. Experts there identified it as the H6N1 bird flu, widely circulating in chickens on the island. The patient, who was not identified, worked in a dairy and had no known connection to live birds. Investigators couldn't figure out how she was infected, but they noted several of her close family and friends also developed flu-like symptoms after spending with her, though none tested positive for H6N1. The research was published online Thursday in the journal Lancet Respiratory Medicine. Since the H5N1 bird flu strain first broke out in southern China in 1996, public health officials have been nervously monitoring its progress. It has so far killed more than 600 people, mostly in Asia. Several other bird flu strains, including H7N9, which was first identified in China in April, have also caused concern but none has so far mutated into a form able to spread easily among people. The question again is, what would it take for this virus to evolve into a pandemic strain, wrote Marion Koopmans, a virologist at the National Institute for Public Health and Environment in Netherlands in commentary accompanying the new report. She said it was worrying that scientists had no early warning signals that such new bird flus could be a problem until humans fell ill. Scientists often monitor birds to see which viruses are killing them, in an attempt to guess which flu strains might be troublesome for humans. But neither H6N1 nor H7N9 make birds very sick. Koopmans called for increased surveillance of animal flu viruses and more research into predict, predicting which viruses might cause a global crisis. We can we can surely better than to have human beings as sentinels, she wrote. The vac the vac the vaccine used in the H7N9 flu that has infected at least 137 people and killed at least 40 at least 45 since last spring. Scientists from Novavax Inc. Gaithersburg, Maryland company say tests on 284 people suggest that after 2 shots of the vaccine, most made antibodies at a level that usually confers protection. They gave a third of the usual dose, and yet they had antibodies in over 80%, said the expert not connected with the work Dr. Greg Holland of the Mayo Clinic. This is encouraging news. We've struggled to make vaccines quickly enough against novel virus, he said. Results were published online Wednesday by New England Journal of Medicine. In a separate announcement on Thursday, Switzerland-based Novartis announced early tests on its H7N9 vaccine in 400 people showed 85% of them got a protective immune response after 2 doses. The data has not yet been published. AP chief medical writer Marilyn Marchong contributed to this report from Milwaukee Online. Okay, thank you for your listening. Bye bye.